This was going to be a long trip. The truck hummed steadily as it rumbled down the snow-packed road, cutting through a landscape that felt like the end of the world. Towering pine trees stood like sentinels on either side, their bare branches scratching the pale gray sky. A radio tower flickered in the distance, briefly, as if blinking, and then disappeared behind the curve of the mountain. But Ria wasn't paying attention to any of that. She was trying not to choke on Luna's perfume, which had completely taken over the air in the vehicle. From the front passenger seat, Luna was at it again, pulling out her designer bottle like it was some kind of ritual. One spray, two, a third. Every burst filled the air with cloying sweetness that clung to the throat like syrup. Luna lived to be noticed. Always polished, always perfectly styled, even now buried in snow. Her long auburn hair spilled in waves over her coat collar, and her sharp features were framed by impossibly thick lashes. Her blue eyes flicked to the mirror with practiced indifference as she prepared for another round. Ria reached for the window handle. Before she could lower it, "God, Luna, are you trying to kill us before we even get to the lodge?" Tessa's voice rang out, dramatic as always. Ria smirked. There it was. Seated to her left, Tessa was already leaning back, arms crossed in full protest mode. Her dyed calico hair looked wild today, strands of honey blonde and auburn catching the pale light. She looked like she hadn't slept much. Or maybe just like she'd expected this exact moment. Luna didn't flinch. Perfume beads smelling like a wet dog. "Thank you very much." Tessa gasped, offended. "Did you seriously just call me a wet dog?" "You said it, not me." Ria tried to tune them out, focusing on the snow-covered trees speeding past. But something tugged at the edge of her thoughts. It wasn't just the perfume, or the bickering, or the cramped seat. It was the feeling that this trip, something about it was wrong. She turned slightly to her right, seeking calm, and found Kai. He sat with effortless ease, sun-kissed blonde hair tousled as if it had defied the cold. His eyes blew like a sky before a storm flicked toward her as he offered a small, familiar smile. Ria leaned in. "Why'd you invite her?" Kai chuckled under his breath, nudging her gently. "You know how she gets?" "But she's not even part of the group," she muttered. Kai glanced toward Luna, a flicker of affection in his eyes. "Yeah, but she's part of my life." Ria bit the inside of her cheek. She didn't respond. It wasn't jealousy, at least that's what she told herself. It was just frustration, watching someone like Kai get consumed by someone like her. The truck jerked slightly as it passed over a pothole, jostling everyone. Tessa groaned dramatically. "I swear if she sprays that bottle again, I'm jumping out." Ria glanced ahead. Julian was still silent behind the wheel. Tall, lean, always composed, Julian never spoke unless he had to. His dark eyes scanned the snow-covered road like he'd memorized it. Even now, with the group slowly unraveling behind him, he looked unfazed. "So," Ria called out lightly, "this place really worth it?" "It is," Julian answered without looking back. "Got us a discount too." "Why so cheap?" Tessa asked, eyeing the endless woods outside. "Feels like one of those places in a horror movie where everyone disappears." Julian gave a lazy shrug. "Family friend. He just wanted it used." She settled back, but her gaze flicked to the frost-covered window again. For just a second, she thought she saw movement, a figure between the trees. Too far, too quick. Gone. Her spine tensed. Tessa leaned close again. "You okay?" Yeah, Ria said softly. "Just tired." But in her chest, the unease had already begun to settle like the snow, quietly layering over something hidden beneath. The drive had dragged on for what felt like an eternity. The sound of the truck's tires crunching against the snowy road, blending with the occasional bickering from inside the car. Ria had been doing her best to ignore the small annoyances, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something about this trip was off. Maybe it was the isolation, the looming sense of unease as the miles of snowy wilderness stretched out before them. Or maybe it was just the group dynamics that had already started to fray. Whatever it was, she was ready for the journey to be over. Finally, after a few more minutes of tense driving, a large lodge loomed in the distance, its rustic charm evident even from a distance. The building stood proudly against the winter landscape, with its wide wooden beams and stone exterior. Its large windows were framed with thick frost, giving the place a cozy, almost hidden-away feel. The roof was steep, with thick piles of snow resting on top, and a massive chimney sent smoke curling into the cold air. It looked like something out of a winter postcard, a perfect place to escape from everything, the kind of place that promised warmth and refuge, surrounded by nothing but the quiet of the mountains and the endless expanse of snow. Julian's tires crunched over the gravel drive as he pulled the truck to a stop beside the lodge. He turned off the engine with a satisfied sigh, glancing around as if ensuring everything was just as he'd expected. He didn't seem fazed by the isolation, but then again, he never was. Always calm. Always steady. Before anyone could say anything, Luna was the first to climb out of the truck. She stretched her arms dramatically over her head, a soft pop coming from her back as she eased the tension in her body. She wore a designer winter coat, one that was clearly far too expensive for a trip like this. The coat had a luxurious fur trim around the collar, and it glimmered in the weak sunlight as she pulled it around herself, looking every bit the part of someone who didn't quite belong in such a secluded place. Still, she strutted over to the lodge without hesitation, her boots clicking sharply against the snow as she walked. Tessa followed next, hopping out of the left back passenger side with a grunt, pulling her oversized coat tighter around herself. Her face was already set in a grimace, but she didn't make any complaints out loud. She was used to Luna's attitude by now. Her calico hair framed her face, a few strands blown around by the wind as she moved to the back of the truck. Rhea followed close behind, her own boots sinking slightly into the fresh snow as she took in the surroundings. It was beautiful, no denying that, but the air felt still, too still, and a quiet unease settled over her. It was as if the entire world had gone quiet, save for the muffled crunch of snow underfoot. She walked around the truck to the trunk when she saw Kai finally climb out from the right. He adjusted his boots, his movements slow and careful, as if they were still new to him. He wasn't quite used to them yet, and the slight awkwardness in his gait only made him more endearing. With a smile that made his blue eyes sparkle in the soft light, Kai walked over to Luna, who was already heading toward the lodge. Without a word, he slid a hand around her waist, pulling her close. She tilted her head up to meet him as he kissed her temple, his lips brushing her skin gently as he whispered to her. "Wait here. I'll carry our things in," Kai said, his voice low and reassuring, though Luna didn't seem to need much reassurance. She nodded, her eyes already scanning the entrance of the lodge, clearly eager to get inside. Tessa rolled her eyes from behind them. "Seriously? We need to get them a room already," she muttered, but her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. Rhea shook her head in amusement, though her smile was a little resigned. "Tessa, you really need to stop egging them on," she said, hoisting her suitcase higher as she moved to the back of the truck. Tessa made a sound of disbelief, clearly unamused by the situation. "Luna needs to stop forcing people to be her lapdogs," she snapped, hauling her own suitcase out of the trunk with a huff. "This is only a week, guys," Julian remarked, his tone calm but firm, as it always was when he took on his unofficial role as the leader. He grabbed his own things out of the trunk before continuing, "It'll be a good break. We can't let a little PDA get in the way of a good time." Rhea smiled faintly, her eyes following him as he made his way toward the lodge. A week. That was all they were here for. A week of escape, of relaxation, of getting away from the noise of the world. She tried to shake off the slight unease that had settled in her chest. She wanted to enjoy it. She needed this. Kai, meanwhile, had already started collecting Luna's belongings from the front of the truck. As usual, he was being a gentleman, but Rhea couldn't help but notice the pile of things Luna had packed for just a few days. Her pillow, blanket, a couple of bottles of what looked like expensive body wash, and other luxuries that made her think Luna had somehow planned on spending the winter here, not just a week. "Looks like you're going to be busy, huh?" Rhea called to Kai, who had a slightly exasperated look on his face as he stacked the items in his arms. Kai gave her a grin, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "Yeah, looks like this is going to take a while. I'll probably need to make a couple of trips just to get everything. Not even to mention her suitcase." Rhea chuckled and gave a small shake of her head. "I thought you said it was just a weekend getaway," she teased, raising an eyebrow at the sheer volume of items Luna had brought with her. Kai shrugged, clearly not bothered. "She likes to travel in style." Luna, already leading the way toward the lodge, glanced back over her shoulder, her blue eyes narrowed with impatience. "Are you two coming, or should I just go inside without you?" All right, Kai said, smiling a little more at her than he probably should have. He gave Rhea a quick nod before turning to head back toward the truck to grab the rest of her things. Rhea was just about to lift her own suitcase when something caught her attention. Her gaze shifted toward the snow-covered ground, and that's when she saw it, a set of footprints. They were fresh, the edges still sharp, the snow undisturbed in most places but for the trail they left behind. The footprints veered off toward the woods, leading away from the lodge and disappearing into the trees. She frowned, the unease in her chest growing. Who else was out here? She hadn't seen anyone around the lodge when they arrived, aside from their group, and it felt odd that there would be footprints just a few feet from the cabin. She couldn't quite place it, but there was something unsettling about them. She took a step closer, instinctively glancing over her shoulder to where Julian was walking toward the front door. He seemed absorbed in his own thoughts, but Rhea called out to him, lifting her chin slightly as she gestured to the tracks. "Julian," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Do you think those footprints are from the owner or someone else?" Julian paused in his tracks, glancing back at her with a lazy shrug. His hands were stuffed deep into the pockets of his jacket, his expression calm as ever. Probably just the owner. He likely came by to check on the cabin and make sure it was stocked for our arrival. Rhea watched as he walked past her without another word, heading toward the door without any further indication that he was concerned. She chewed her lip for a moment, still staring at the footprints in the snow, before the sensation of being watched crept up her spine. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. Tessa had caught up, now standing next to her with her arms carrying her own items. Her green eyes narrowed at the footprints in the snow as she scanned them carefully. She didn't speak right away, but the look she gave Rhea was enough to tell her that she, too, had noticed the strange trail leading into the woods. But despite the unease, there wasn't much they could do about it right now. The others were already heading toward the lodge, and she didn't want to fall behind. So, after a long pause, Rhea gave a small, almost reluctant shrug, glancing back at Tessa. "Come on," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Let's not keep Julian waiting." Tessa nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line, and together, the two girls followed Julian toward the front door of the lodge. The sound of their boots crunching in the snow mingling with the soft wind that stirred the frozen air.